Hi everyone. In this presentation, I will discuss inventory tracking in Link's supply chain management simulation game. In Link's, we have inventory tracking for both finished goods and procurement inventories. First, let's look at inventory tracking of finished goods. This is how a typical report of finished goods inventories would look like. Right now, in this case, we are looking at hyperware for firm 5. And since this company is also involved in postponed production, you have product 5-0 as well. At the top of this report, you get information about plant/DC1 finished goods inventories. Now, plant is co-located with DC1, and the production of different products that you have should be shown in this particular section of the report. So for example, for product 50, that's your postponed production, you have a regular production of 18,000 units. You will have 18,000 units in inventories because you did not start with any beginning inventories. But this production would be meant for sales in a different region, because postponed production essentially means that you want to complete part of the production in the plant and then the rest of it at the DC in a given region by understanding what the sales of that particular regions are. So here, for example, the 18,000 that has been produced is going to be shipped out to DC3 by surface transportation. That's why you have a minus 18,000. And therefore, ending inventories would be 0 in DC1. For product 5.1, which is your hyperware, you started with 13,125 units of inventories. A regular production of 10,000 units bring up the available inventories to 23,125. Now you ship 6,000 units to DC2 by using surface transportation. And then within region 1 as well, you expect sales of 9,872. So when you subtract these two from your available inventories, you get the ending inventories to be 7,253. Now let's look at DC2 finished goods inventories. In DC2, we start with the beginning inventories of 0. There are plant shipments of 5,000 units. That's going to be air transportation. You get products from here to DC2 through air. You have postponed production of 2,798, which is what you are expecting to sell in that particular month, which results in available inventories of 2,202. Okay, so that's what you have here as your ending inventories. Now remember that since it's been shipped by air, there is no delayed shipment, something that we have also seen in the forecasting discussion that we had. So it's a 0 delayed shipments. For product 5.1, you had initial inventories of 7,709. The planned shipments through surface transportation was made of 5,200 units, bringing up the available inventories to 12,909. Then there was sales of 9,269 units in region 2, which was sold using this inventories. There was a delayed shipment of 800 units because, as you can see here, 6,000 units were shipped out to DC2, out of which only 5,200 arrived by surface transportation and the remaining 800 were delayed. This is because the arrival rate that you can get from this particular transportation provider was 87%. So the ending inventories for product 5.1 in DC2 is 4,440. And finally, looking at DC3, you have a beginning inventories of 11,052 plus 16,100 is the planned shipments through surface transportation. This is the 18,000 that you see here, which has been shipped out. And since the reliability is 89% for the transportation provider, you get 89% of that 18,000 as 16,100, and the remaining 1,900 would be delayed shipments that you see at the bottom. So the beginning inventories plus planned shipment surface minus postponed production, this is what the sales forecast for this region was, gives you available inventories of 11,261. And as I said, there will be delayed shipments of 1,900, bringing the ending inventories to 13,161. And here for product 5.1, you didn't have any beginning inventories, no shipments, postponed production of 8,109, available inventories of 8,109, and then this is what is eventually being sold in this market, because you can convert that inventories directly into finished goods. So finally, here you would have ending inventories of 0. One of the advantages of postponed production is that you don't carry inventories in those hyperware and metaware format, because you can make exactly what the demand is. Therefore, the inventory carrying cost for these products could be brought down. Now, looking at the procurement inventory report, it looks very similar to the finished goods inventories. You still have beginning inventories. Instead of production, you have purchases, surface, air, purchases, emergency, and then available inventories. Once you have all those purchases, you would use them for production. So it would be for either producing the postponed product or for producing hyperware or metaware. You could also have emergency production, again directed towards postponed product, hyperware, or metaware. So in this situation, if you notice, alpha and beta are your raw materials. Now, alpha and beta always arrive 100% on time. So you will never have delayed purchases. The one which you see just before ending inventories, it will be blank. But in the case of gamma and delta, the overall calculations would look very similar to finished goods. You will have some beginning inventories. You would purchase them by using surface transportation or air transportation. You might have emergency purchases in case your forecast is not accurate, to bring your available inventories to 10,662 in this case. And then out of that, 10,000 is required for production of 4.1, which is your hyperware. And then you come down to replacement parts, for which 631 has been deducted. The delayed purchases of 2,100. In this case, you would have delayed purchases, just like you had in the finished goods inventory report. And the ending inventories are 2,131. This is true for delta as well as gamma. For epsilon, it's important to remember that the purchases that will be made using surface transportation are not available for use in the round that you have placed those purchases in. So for example, this 20,000 is a number that was put in your decisions during round 13 for use during round 14. So this, if you want to use something in round 14, you will have to put this particular decision in round 13 decisions, and then you can use that in the round 14 decisions that when you will make that. Whereas in gamma and delta as well as alpha and beta, whatever you have placed in a given round, let's say in round 13, can be used in that same round. So that's something which you have to keep in mind. When we were discussing balance sheets, I had informed you that all the epsilons to be delivered are reported at the bottom of your balance sheet. So you want to keep an account of how much is on delivery in a given month. Now, inventory tracking is important. It contributes to your overall performance. Inventory turnover is one of the metrics that has been used for creating your composite score, and it's calculated by taking your product cost for all products from the corporate profit and loss statement and dividing it by the average of the inventories of both finished goods and procurement inventories. So that's the inventory turnover, which accounts for a certain weight towards your final composite score. Now let's look at a problem to gain some further insights into inventory tracking. Now in this problem, we have firm X that has decided to reconfigure their product X1 in round number 7 after careful analysis of the research studies they ordered in rounds number 5 and 6. Their inventories of product X1 at the end of round number 6 were 5,098 units at DC1, 64 units at DC2, and 5,078 units at DC3. Now their round number 7 sales volume forecasts for the new X1, because they have reconfigured the product, this is now going to be a new X1. In region 2 were 6,500 units in channel 1 and 7,000 units in channel 2. Okay, so they're changing their product and they expect this new product to sell in these quantities in those two channels, channel 1 and channel 2. They suspected that their new product X1 would be successful, but they opted for conservative forecasts. At the beginning of the simulation, they agreed to a policy of tight inventory control to keep their costs low. So they requested a total X1 production of 46,100 units for round number 7. Okay, so this is what they have already placed as their production for round number 7. Now let's look at some questions associated with this. So question number 1 would be, what was region number 2's beginning inventories of product X1 at the start of round number 7? Okay, so at the start of round number 7, how much do we expect the beginning inventories for this product to be? Now this information, we are trying to kind of go over certain questions to bring up aspects that have been discussed in Link's manual. Now whenever you are reconfiguring a product, your older product is disposed of at 80% of its value. So now if you are looking at the beginning inventory of the product at the start of the next round, especially when you have reconfigured, you will find that you will have 0 inventories of that particular product because the older one has been disposed of, the new product has yet to be produced, so it's under production, so beginning inventories would be 0. So we would say 0 because of the fact that it's reconfigured and the older product, 64 units of those X1 that we had, which was the older version of X1, they will be sold at a disposal sales for 80% of their values in round number 6, at the end of round number 6. So that's something which you have to keep in mind when you're looking at inventory tracking. Coming to the next problem here. Given the X1 sales volume forecast, what shipment of product X1 are required for DC2 in round 7? This is something that you specify in your transportation decision form because you have to move those products from the plant /DC1 to DC2. Now if you look at the problem in the previous slide, it tells you that you're expecting 6,500 units to be sold in channel 1 and 7,000 units to be sold in channel 2. So in total, you're expecting 13,500 units to be sold. Now if you were to use air transportation, then you would definitely order at least 13,500 plus safety stock, right? So if it's air transportation, let's just put that here. If air transportation, then 13,500 units plus safety stock, depending upon whatever safety stock policy that you have decided for your firm. If you're using surface transportation, it's important to remember that it is dependent on the reliability or arrival rate performance of the specific carrier that you choose. So in this case, you would want to order a little bit more than the 13,500 that you plan to sell. So here you should use the 13,500, which is what you have forecasted, and divide that by the shipper's delivery reliability, because that will increase the numbers accordingly. Shipper's reliability and then plus the safety stock. So you still want to add the safety stock to account for any variations in demand. Now let's look at the next problem. Assume that they decided to use shipper I ship 13,500 X1 units via surface to DC2. Also assume actual sales were 13,500 units. What was DC2's round number 7 expected ending inventory of product X1? We use the reliability of 80% for this particular shipper. Now here we will be following the same set of calculations that we did earlier with forecasting to get an understanding of the ending inventories. So we have a beginning inventory of 0 because it's a new product. We have plus a planned shipment surface transportation which is 10,800 units plus planned shipment air if you have any. This we don't have any, so it's going to be 0. This 10,800 is because of the 80% reliability, 80% of 13,500. Okay. Then you add any emergency shipments that you have. So planned shipments emergency. Now this emergency shipment is going to be 2,700 so that you can have the required units to sell, because your total sales forecasts are 13,500. Your actual sales are also 13,500, but the delivery was only for 10,800. So there will be an emergency shipments for the remaining 2,700. Okay, so this, and then postponed production, we don't have any here because we are looking at X1. So postponed production will be 0. Will give us an available inventory value. Which turns out to be 13,500 because that's something which we need to sell in that particular month. So from here we subtract the sales in region 2, the 13,500 units that we have forecasted, which is also the actual sales. But this doesn't end here. Once we have taken into account the sales, which was managed with the help of this emergency planned shipment, we still are expecting some delayed shipments because of this earlier surface transportation that we had chosen for 13,500 units. So that will add to the ending inventories, to the inventories that we will be having here. So plus the planned shipments that were delayed. And that is going to be 13,500 minus 10,800, which is 2,700. So the ending inventory will be 2,700. Okay, so that's an inventory tracking problem which illustrates how you should look and think about the inventory status in a given month. Now let's assume that firm X used shipper I to transport 13,500 units of product X1 to DC2, again by surface transportation or surface mode, and the actual sales end up being higher than the forecast. That is, it's going to be 7,000 in channel 1 and 9,575 in channel 2. So total of 16,575. Now let's also assume that 94% of the X1 shipment arrived on time. Instead of the 80% that we had chosen in the previous part of the problem, let's assume that 94% of those shipments arrived on time. And there was no postponed production. Let's complete the inventory accounting as we did in the previous case and try to understand what the ending inventories in this case are going to be. Okay, so once again, we will start with the beginning inventories. So beginning inventories, our beginning inventory is 0 plus planned shipment using surface mode. And 94% is our reliability, so 94% of 13,500. Now it's important to remember that this was our forecast and these numbers are our actual sales. We would have made our shipments according to our forecast as against what the actual sales are. So 94% of 13,500 would be 12,690 plus planned shipments using air mode, if there are any. In our case, there is none, so it's going to be 0. Now, since we have much higher sales than what we had shipped, we will have some planned shipments that will be emergency shipments. So we will include that here, planned shipments emergency, and this is equal to the total sales that we're expecting minus the total quantities that we have been delivered. So 16,575 minus 12,690 will give you 3,885. Now postponed production, we don't have any, so we put that as 0. Okay, so this gives you available inventories of 16,575, which is exactly equal to what you're expecting to sell. So that's your available inventories. Now from this, you sell within region 2. So sales for region 2 will be sold from this unit 16,000, and the sales are going to be 16,575. This information is provided to us here, so we subtract that. But then there are some delayed shipments because of this 94% reliability, so the remaining 6% of the inventories are coming late to this DC. So planned shipment delayed, and that is going to be 13,500 minus 12,690, which gives you 810 units. So ending inventories will be 810 units. which is 6% of your ordered quantities of 13,500. So that's where we end our discussion on inventory tracking. Thanks for listening.